Howdy, and welcome to episode 44 of T-Shirts and Shawls. I'm Karen, and today is Thursday, December 14th, 2017. So if you are a regular viewer of the podcast, you know that I record every other Thursday. And thinking about the next episode, so 2 weeks from today, that is the week of Christmas. And we are still finalizing our plans for family. We're not traveling, but family in the form of my in-laws are traveling to us. I don't know yet if they are going to stay the entire time at my brother-in-law's house or if they're going to stay with us at all. Anyway, you don't need to know all those details. Just basically, I could potentially have family visiting during that week. If it falls on a Thursday, I don't want to record the podcast while they're here. So just a little heads up, 2 weeks from today may have a new podcast episode. It may need to be adjusted slightly as far as which day it occurs, or there might be a short one since it is a holiday week anyway. So just a little heads up for that. But really today, even though it's a little before the new year, I want to kind of reflect on the past year and look ahead to the next year. And so that's kind of where the episode title comes from. And I'm tying the t-shirt into that. So we'll go ahead and go to the next section and we'll start talking about reflections. So the t-shirt that I'm wearing today is from Doctor Who. And it is Wibbly Wobbly Timey Wimey. And then there's a little TARDIS there. I actually don't want to talk about Doctor Who, but I picked this shirt because it talks about time and thinking about reflecting about time. It seemed to kind of fit that theme. I'll be honest, I went through my entire closet of t-shirts and looked at each one and kind of thought about it. Could this be a shirt that fits with the theme of reflection? No, could this be one? And I really didn't have shirts that I felt really fit that theme, and so this is the closest that I got. So no Doctor Who talk today, although I am really looking forward to seeing what happens in the future with Doctor Who. But kind of talking about time and wibbly wobbly, so looking back and looking ahead. So, and really what I'm reflecting on here is the kind of my business side of things, especially Roundtable Yarns. So a little bit of background, especially if you are a new viewer to the podcast, or even if you have been watching, maybe there are some of these details that you don't know. Basically the end of this year is the end of my 3rd year in business of Roundtable Yarns. So it was about this time of year, I think, that I actually started getting the idea for Roundtable Yarns, and then I kind of announced it in, I think in January of, so that would be 2015, because then it was all of 2015, all of 2016, and all of 2015, and really launched at DFW Fiberfest of that year. So, so this is the end of my 3rd year in business, and I don't want to go into too many details, but I'll just say the first year in business, as far as the financial concerns are discussing those, I took a loss, which is typical in the first year of many businesses. I actually used money that I made for editing jobs to pay for Roundtable Yarns. That's Wally's tail. Hopefully you'll see a little more than his tail. So I used editing money to pay for Roundtable Yarns, and at the end of that first year, I was in the red, and pretty deep in the red, a few $1,000s. So my next year, my goal was to break even, and perhaps have a little bit more, and I met that goal. But my husband and I had a long talk. And, you know, if you look up like business types of things, usually in the life cycle of a business, year 3 is a pretty key year. A lot of times it's like years 3 through 5, but year 3 seems to be a pretty critical year. That's when businesses that are potentially successful kind of see a turnaround and see whether or not the business is viable. So my husband and I had a long talk at the beginning of this year, beginning of 2017. Okay, this is the 3rd year of Roundtable Yarns. I needed to show that it was a viable business. And I don't measure success completely based upon finances. There are a lot more things that I view as more important, and a lot of that has to do with the community and everything. But I mean, it is honestly, it is a business, and if I don't show that it is viable, or especially if I'm losing money, I can understand my husband not wanting to encourage me to continue. Just to rest any fears that you might be having at this moment, Roundtable Yarns is totally continuing. So I'll just say that straightforward. But this was the year that we decided it's the make it or break it year, basically. So so we talked about specifics about that. So I am very thrilled to say that I met the goals for this year. And that is in no small part thanks to you guys. I mean, that's really the reason why I'm able to do this and I'm able to meet my goals. Thank you guys so much for however you have supported me this year, whether you have directly bought, there's Wally, whether you've directly bought yarn or patterns from me, if you've been watching the podcast, spreading information, sharing the podcast, my newsletter, the yarn, the patterns, the tutorials, you know, all the things that I'm doing, sharing them with other people, whatever you've done, thank you very, very much. I could not do this without you. So I met the goals for year 3. So that is really exciting and thrilling. So, so I've gotten the support from my husband to keep this up. So yay! Which I'm thrilled about, because I've put my heart and soul into this, and I couldn't imagine not being able to continue. But that being said, I have been having all these little doubts, like this little doubting voice in my head of, okay, well, this year was good, but what if it was a fluke? You know, what if it was just luck? What if it wasn't really a result of any of the work that you did, and it all just comes crashing down? So, you know, that little voice is really hard to silence, but I've been thinking about what to do to help put those internal doubts to rest. So a lot of that is thinking ahead to plans for next year, but also reflecting upon this year. You know, okay, so this year was successful, so why? What was it about? What did I do? What happened that helped this year become successful? So I've been thinking about that. I'm starting to think about that. I'll be honest that I'm just at the beginnings of really sitting down and thinking about those details. So I started thinking about that and how that might influence, you know, my decisions for next year. And I am part of, and I've actually been a part of this online business community for 3 years now. So I'm part of an online business community for creatives, for makers and artists who run business. And it is called the Starship, and the person who runs the Starship is named Tara Swagger. And she is really, really awesome. She has such great advice. If you are a creative business person, I highly recommend her podcast, Explore Your Enthusiasm. Just lots and lots of great advice. But one of the things that she does, and I'm looking down because I'm looking at her book. So this is called Map Your Business. And basically, so I wrote 2018 up here. This is going to be my 2018 version of the book, because basically the book is like a big workbook. So she asks you questions and leaves you room to write in responses. So it's not a book that you read, it's a book that you actually work through. So this is going to be I just got this, I just ordered a new copy. I just got this in the mail last week, so this is going to be my 2018 version. And I looked at my 2017 version, and I realized that I did stuff at the beginning, and then I didn't go back through the rest of the year and reflect Basically, she breaks down the year into quarters, and you make goals for each quarter, and then you reflect at the end of each month and at the end of each quarter to see, you know, how you've done towards your goals. And I honestly didn't do much of that in this past year, in 2017. And I think that might be some of the reason I'm having these voices of doubt, because I haven't sat down to think about what worked and what I should continue doing. And so one of my goals for 2018 is to keep up with this and to actually do the quarterly planning and the monthly reflections and checking back in. But one of the reasons I've realized I haven't done this so much this year is that I have, quite frankly, I've been busy. I have been doing so many things, and I don't want to not do any of those things. I think that they are all very, very valuable things. I want to continue doing this podcast, my newsletter, you know, definitely don't think that the time that I've been spending has been bad. But there are also a lot of things that I have done that have been, honestly, distractions. So I'm the type of person who gets an idea and I get super excited about it and I want to do it right away. You know, I want to jump in and do something. And it doesn't have to be something big. It can be something small. For example, I might read an article about how important it is to use tags on YouTube videos, for example, so like for the podcast. And I think, oh my gosh, I need to go change all my tags, you know, do research on what kinds of tags I should use, and then go through all the videos. And you have to do them one at a time, especially if you want different tags for different videos. So, you know, go in and change all my tags. And for whatever reason, I get that idea in my head and I have to do it right then. And sorry, Wally is over here playing and everything. I have to do it right then. Instead of doing some of the things that are probably more important and probably things that I should be doing, such as doing my reflections. So instead, I spend the day updating all my tags on my YouTube videos. And that's what I've done a lot of this year, and what I think that I need to really cut back on for 2018. Yes, there are some of those ideas that are really good ideas and that I should implement, but I don't have to do every single idea that pops into my head. So, so one of the things that you do at the beginning of the year in Tara's book is create a North Star. So it's like a word or an idea that guides you kind of throughout the year. And I really think that my North Star for 2018 needs to be focus. That I need to go through and say, this is my goal for this quarter. This is my goal for the month, my goal for the week, even my goal for each day. These are the things that I want to get done. And when I have those, oh, I have to do this now moments, I'm going to have a book, a little, a journal that I write down those ideas. And then the next time that I sit and reflect on these are the things that need to be done today, this week, this month. If that is something that fits in line with the goals for that time period, then I will add that task to what I'm doing during that time. But instead of just getting all these ideas and jumping on them right away, I think I need to let them percolate a bit and prioritize better, because this is what I feel has been lacking. Which leads me to my other North Star, and I want my other North Star to be creativity, because I feel like I've been doing a lot of work in my business, so the day-to-day, dyeing the yarn and doing all the things, but I haven't really worked that larger picture on the business, and a lot of that is developing new colorways, for example. And I think this also is part of the reason why I haven't really been doing much designing as well. I haven't been leaving myself space to do that creative thinking work. And yes, with the colorways, I've developed new colorways for the Yarn Club. I've developed self-striping colorways for certain events and for like the holidays and whatnot. But when was the last time I developed a self-striping colorway that I just added to the regular lineup? Do you know? I didn't look it up, but I'm pretty sure the last one was Archimedes, and that was way at the beginning of this year. So that means although I've had some exclusive colorways, I have not added a regular self-striping colorway. And I think that's a problem. I think that I should be adding in some new self-striping things, and because that's what one of the things I enjoy doing, you know, playing with colors. I have all these mini skein samples of colors, and just mixing them all around and seeing what colors work together. I really haven't been doing that besides for the exclusives or the holidays. So I want to leave more space for things like that, and so I need to focus on what's important, not get distracted by the new idea that I'm excited about at the time. So focus on giving myself those creative times, and focus on reflecting to see what has been working, because like I said, the third year showed that this is working, but what exactly is working? I need to figure that out so I make sure that I continue doing the things that are working. So anyway, that's, I know this is a pretty long segment, but this is something that that I feel that I want to share with you, both for a little transparency, so you guys kind of see a little bit of what's going on behind the scenes, but also for accountability. That if I and I will tell the people in the Starship as well. That's one thing about having that online community, that there is some accountability there. But I really feel like I also want to have some accountability toward you guys. Kind of help keep me in line whenever I get these kind of harebrained, I need to do it now ideas. Remind me to stop and think, okay, do I really need to do this right now? Or is it something that, yes, I probably do want to do in the future, but it doesn't have to be done right now. So just, if you guys could help keep me on track and keep me focused this year, that would be awesome. Anyway, so like I said, it's a big segment, but it's definitely on my mind a lot that I'm thinking right now, and that I will be thinking about, especially for the next few weeks in plans for 2018. So I just wanted to share a lot of those ideas with you. So in the idea of reflection, I decided to pull out this shawl to talk about today. So this is one of my designs. This is my Blanche Fleur shawl. And this shawl I looked up on Ravelry. I knit it in the very end of September, beginning of October of 2014, and I released the pattern in December of 2014. So that was 3 years ago. So, which again, time just passing by, I can't believe it has been 3 years since this pattern was released. And although I have enjoyed a number of other designs that I have done, both before and after this one, I think this one is still, if not the favorite pattern I've designed, probably one of them. So this is a shawl that is a triangular shawl. So you start with the garter tab cast on here, and you go down this way, but it has a knitted on border. So instead of having the gazillion stitches on your needle and having to do a border that way, what you do is you cast on these stitches and then you knit going this way. And every time you come back to the body, you join it. And I think this one uses a knit two together to join the border and the body. And so that way, when you come to the other end of the shawl, instead of having to bind off all of those stitches that I just passed by, you're only binding off those stitches. And this was really the first time that I had done a knitted on border. I kind of learned the idea for this design, and I fell in love with that technique because you don't have to bind off the gazillion stitches. I think it's really great, and it also allows for a lot of different design elements, because if you're changing the direction of your knitting, this is going in this direction, and then now this one is going in this direction. You can play a lot with the fabric characteristics and the different design elements that you have. So that's a lot of fun as far as designing. And then I also have these little balls here. They are not baubles. These are, and this is what my tech editor, we spend a lot of time thinking about what to call them. We call them faux noops. Is it noops or nups? I never can remember. Noops, nups. Anyway, those little things that are very difficult to actually create, because usually you are purling together 5 or 7 or sometimes even 9 stitches to create those. And this is a way of doing the same type of thing in a much easier way. So that's what I used for this pattern. And like I said, it's been one of my favorites. And this yarn was Lazy Cat yarn. So Lazy Cat is one of the local DFW yarn dyers, Rebecca. And so this was before I started dyeing my own yarn. So I was wanting to definitely support the fellow indie dyers, which I still want to support, but I didn't even have my own yarn at that point. The unfortunate thing is this particular base that I used is one that she discontinued. So, you know, I had this on display in my booth, and people would come by and, you know, fall in love with it, and they would immediately, because Rebecca and I are usually at the same shows, I would send them to her booth, but I would have to tell them, so you can get these colors, but you would have to get a different base because she has discontinued this base. And that actually seemed to disappoint some people. So I decided that I wanted to make sure it was done in a yarn that people could get. So, especially since by that time I had dyed my own yarn, I recreated the shawl in my yarn. So this is in my Camelot base. And so I knit it again. And this is a shawl that seems to be something that people can knit multiple times. And those of you watching that have knit this multiple times, I know who you are. Anyway, so this does seem to be something that people have and can make multiple times. So it's, I don't know, it's just, I really do think that this is my favorite design that I've done. I really enjoy it. The photo shoot, so the photo shoot that I did was with the original that I did with my sister. That was the moment where I really felt like I was starting to take better photos, and I'm really happy with how some of those pictures came out. And so it just seemed like this was a design where a lot of things just kind of all came together. And I can't believe that it's been 3 years that since this one came out, but it's definitely been a favorite. And so in thinking about reflections, I wanted to kind of reflect back on this one. Kind of matches the shirt, though I think this one, I don't know which one goes better with the shirt. Anyway, I just wanted to reflect back on this shawl and think about the design. And maybe this is the kind of thing that any future designs that I do, I want to do things that are a little more inspired. And this one, lots of different techniques that I learned for this, and different things. That's the kind of design that I would like to do moving forward, rather than you know, taking a stitch from a stitch dictionary and putting it in the round in a cowl, which I feel like some of my brain space this year, I wasn't giving myself enough time for that creativity, and that's why I've kind of taken a break from designing beyond the book that I put out, so that way I can kind of recharge some of those batteries and be able to think about things that are more like this. So if I don't actually have specific plans for designs right now, but any designs that I do in the future, I want to think more about this shawl, and do those types of things. So my gift knitting has continued, and I have more finished items. Last time I showed you the Pandemonium hat. That was this super cute little hat that had a bunch of panda faces on it. And I wanted to add a pom-pom to the top. And I actually asked on Instagram, you know, which of the colors in the hat should I use for the pom-pom. And I thought that I would use all 4 colors, so the black, the white, the gray, and the purple, and create kind of an effect where it started with the black and went to the white and the gray and then ended in the purple. And so I got out my pom-pom maker and I started doing that, and I completely forgot. So that would be kind of the idea that I was going for. So a little black and then white, gray, and then ends in the purple. So I got out my pom-pom maker and I did that, and I totally forgot that when you do that, you have two sides of the pom-pom, and you kind of have to think about how those two sides work together. And I was wanting more like, you know, this coming out of the top of the hat. So the black would be kind of at the bottom. Hey, Wally. The black would be at the bottom and then growing out. No, this is what I got. It looks like a mohawk or something, which you know might be a cute little pom pom on something else, but it's not what I was going for with the pandemonium hat. So I said, you know what? Instead of trying to get like a gradient or something like that, I'm just gonna mix all the colors together. So that's what I did, and I came up with this pom-pom. So this is one where all the colors are in there, just mixed together. And I still need to put this on the hat. Still not attached, but that is something that I will be doing all the finishing work of these gifts and wrapping them this weekend. So just wanted to show you that weird pom-pom that was not the way I envisioned it. So then the next thing that I finished, I showed you guys that I started this last time. This is the Syndicate hat, and it is for my nephew. So I wanted something pretty basic that he could wear. So it's a, you know, a dark blue color. And yeah, 1x1 rib for the entire hat. Gotta say, I should not have done that, because that was a slog. 1x1 rib just takes a lot of time and effort. I mean, you know, moving the yarn back and forth and back and forth in front and behind of the needle. So yeah, excuse me. Anyway, I really do like the top of the hat with this kind of X pattern rather than the kind of more typical, just kind of all coming together. So I really like the top of that hat. So that pretty plain hat, no pom-pom going on it, for my nephew. And then the next thing that I finished, it still needs one little finishing item. This is a hat for my older niece called Distinct Moral Support. Hunter Hammerson, and basically this hat uses short rows right here, and it creates this gathered area, and then you knit this tab, and you basically sew the tab on here, and when you block it, you're supposed to kind of form all the gathers, and then you put a decorative button on the top. So I still need to add the button. So here is my decorative button that I picked up at the Knitting Fairy. And I just need to basically sew the button on. I wanted a button that was a little bit bigger than this, because I do think this is a tiny bit small, but I really like the design on this. It's a little flower. So I went ahead and got this button. So I still need to sew that on, but other than that, the knitting of this hat is finished. And so with this yarn, I completely forgot that it was a blend of wool with a little silk. And if you've worked with silk before, when we wet block it, it grows. So, and then the brim of the hat is in seed stitch rather than ribbing. So it's a little loose. It grew a little bit. It still fits. I tried it on my own head, and it's for my, like I said, my 16-year-old niece. So much more adult woman sized than kid sized. So it does fit, but it looks a little stretched out. So I think part of that is because, like I said, it's seed stitch, not ribbing, but also because I forgot about the tendency of silk to grow when you get it wet. So a little lesson there, which is why swatching is always good. To be honest, I did not swatch for that hat. The other thing that I finished, this is a hat for another niece. I have 4 nieces, so lots of, no, 5, because, no, yeah, 5 nieces. Oh my goodness. Almost forgot about the little baby. So 5 nieces, so lots of little hats for girls. So this is the hogback hat. Those of you who have been to my booth, maybe you've seen the checkerwork hat. That's one that I did out of my self-striping in the autumn colors. And it, just the way the stitch pattern is designed, it almost makes it look like little bitty entrelac setup, but it's not at all. It's just the way the stitch pattern and the yarn work together. It creates a really neat effect. Anyway, so this is the same designer. So it works really nicely with self-striping yarn. You've got some slip stitches in here to create these lines. And so I thought that looked really nice. I had I think I mentioned last time that I was going to knit her a hat in a color that was very similar to the middle blue on this. But I had a skein of this Christmas color snag in my spin dryer and snap, so it was a skein that I couldn't sell. And especially since it's a Christmas color, I don't really need to use it as a sample in my booth since it's only available at Christmas time. So I decided, you know what, it's got that blue in it that I know my niece really likes. I think this is a color that she would like, so I decided to use that yarn for this hat. So really like how that turned out, and I really like the way the color comes together there in the center at the top too. Looking at my list, I think, yeah, those are all of the things that I have finished in the past 2 weeks. What have I been knitting? Obviously, lots and lots of gifts, and I have one more gift that is still on my list to do. And it is a pair of boot cuffs for my sister. So I started working with one pattern and it is not working, and so I need to rip it out, and I have another much simpler pattern that I'm going to use instead. But I have not actually done the ripping out yet, so I thought, I actually thought about doing it last night, but then I decided, you know what, I'm recording the podcast tomorrow. I'll just wait to rip it out until after I record the podcast so I can show you guys what it is that I started and what I will be ripping out. So basically, these are the boot cuffs that I started, and there's nothing wrong with this pattern at all. I think it's the entwined boot cuffs, enchanted boot, it starts with an E. I will put it in the show notes. So there's nothing wrong with the pattern at all. There's nothing wrong with the yarn. I just feel like these two things were not working together. And you probably are looking at it and thinking, well, what's not working? It looks great. I agree, it looks great. The actual knitting, though, is not great. So this is actually an Aran weight yarn, which is so slightly thicker than worsted, and the pattern is designed for worsted weight yarn. But usually you can substitute back and forth between those two. So the gauge of this is actually measured on the cable pattern. So it's got a cable pattern in there. And so the gauge is measured by the cable pattern, and cables do tend to draw the fabric in. So typically for a worsted weight yarn, your gauge would be 20 stitches per inch. And for me, to get 20 stitches per inch on worsted weight yarn, I usually use size 8 needles. I'm a tight knitter, so many of you probably use 7s for worsted weight. For me, I need an 8. Well, this called for size 6 needles. Actually started on size 5 for the ribbing, and then size 6 needles, and 31 stitches per inch in the cable pattern. So again, not stockinette, in the cable pattern. But even so, you know, on a size 8 needle, going from 20 stitches per inch to 31 stitches per inch in the cable, I knew the size 8 would be too big. And I totally could have done a gauge swatch and figured it out, but I didn't, because even though I tell you guys to do gauge swatches, I don't always do them. Anyway, so I decided to go ahead, to go up a needle size from what the pattern said. So I started the ribbing on 6s, and I thought that I would switch to 7s when I got to the cables. But when I tried them on, I realized that this was the perfect right size with the 6s. So I just kept going with the 6s after the ribbing, which the 6 for the cable section is what the pattern calls for. Oh my gosh, you guys. doing Aran weight yarn on size 6 needles with cables totally hurt my hands so badly. It was, and there are a lot of cables on this thing. I mean, both sides. I think you're doing it 11 times around. So there are a lot of cable crossings, and it was just killer on my hands. I would sit there and do one round of cables, and then I'd just have to like just put it down and rest my hands and then pick it back up and do the round without cables. And then I would sit there and think, oh no, now I've got a cable round coming up. Get ready for hand pain. And this is as far as I got. And it's a pair of boot cuffs, so that means if I finish this one, I would have to go finish the other one too. And I just decided, you know what, this is not being kind to my hands. And ultimately, I don't think this is a project that I'm going to be happy with. It might look great, but killing my hands and then doing it on a deadline, since it is a gift, that is not something that I want to do. So after, oh, hang on. Eva just grabbed the pom-pom. Oh my goodness. Hang on. Okay, Eva just tried to get away with this. I'm going to put this in a safe place in a project bag. Okay. That's the good one. She couldn't have grabbed the bad one. Anyway, little excitement there. So I'm going to rip these out this afternoon, start the easier stitch pattern, and get those done for my sister's gift. So in the meantime, because like I said, it was killer on my hands to work on those, and so I wasn't really wanting to work on those, I've made some more progress on my Cheshire Cat shawl. So it's at the point now where it's all super scrunched up on the needles, so you can't really see it very well, but it's basically stripes at this point. So I am working on these stripe sections. This is out of my Camelot base in the dark gray night and the pink, called My Beauty Will Not Hold. It's got a longer name. I usually just refer to it in my head as My Beauty. So anyway, so those two colors, and then when I get to the end of the stripe section, there's a lace border section. I'm going to do that in the gray. And I am 5 repeats away from that stripe, or the border section, and a repeat is a gray stripe and a pink stripe. So 10 more sets, so I guess 10 more sets of 2 rows, so 20 more rows. I am 20 rows away from getting to the lace section, so I'm excited about that. This is my entry for the Q4 knit along, since it is the Cheshire Cat shawl and therefore based on a literary theme. So I think at this rate I should be able to finish that by the end of the year in this quarter, because like I said, it's just the boot cuffs. It's my last gift, and then I can really concentrate on the shawl. So I do have a pair of socks on the needles, which I've done a tiny bit of. You guys have seen that. I'm doing the mustache pumpkin spice latte. And then I've got my cardigan, my Let Go cardigan that I've started that has not gotten any work done on. But I'm really looking forward to getting back to once I finish out the last of the gifts. And then I might return back to that Beauty and the Beast shawl that is great. There's nothing wrong with the yarn, there's nothing wrong with the pattern. Just for some reason it wasn't really grabbing me. So I'll do some more work on that after I get all these other things done, and see if it's a project I want to continue or if it's one that I should decide to frog. So anyway, lots of things that I will be working on once I get this final gift out of the way. So I have done a little bit of stashing the other weekend at the Knitting Fairy Brazen Stitchery, so another indie dyer local to DFW, Stacy, and now Penny. So Penny joined and also does the dyeing for Brazen Stitchery. They did a trunk show at the Knitting Fairy, so I went to that, and of course had to come home with some of their yarn. So self-striping is what I got. So there's her cute little sheepy logo. And I keep saying her because I just always think Brazen Stitchery is Stacy, but Stacy and Penny now. So they, and in fact this one was dyed by Penny. So you can see, dyed by Penny. So this is the Hermione colorway at, I think it was at Fiber Fest. yeah, I think it was DFW Fiber Fest, I picked up the Molly, so Molly Weasley colorway, and I almost got Hermione at that point, but I didn't, so this time I got Hermione. And then it comes with a mini skein that's in the gray to do the heels and possibly toes, but probably definitely do the heel. I don't know about the toes. So yeah, so that's something I'm adding to my stash. And then I have a book that I'm adding to my stash. So through Ply Magazine, one of the regular features has been a Knitting Ergonomically by Carson Demers. So Demers, I need to figure out how to pronounce his name. Anyway, so he is a physical therapist, and so he talks a lot about what to do to keep your body healthy, especially sometimes if you're hunched over your knitting, that can really wreak havoc with your body. And so he actually now has a book that came out recently called Knitting Comfortably. So the ergonomics of hand knitting. So there is his name there. Picture back. So this, I just got this, so I really haven't had much of a chance to look through it. But he basically goes through and talks about different parts of the body, and the different things that you can do. So I'm just seeing just this one chapter is looking at needle selection and stitch formation and knitting styles. So not just how you're holding your body, but also some of the other choices that you make as far as how you are knitting. And he also talks, he does use knitting in here, but I'm sure it also applies to crochet, and he, especially for Ply Magazine, often talks about spinning. So all of this can be used for whatever of those fiber crafts you're doing. And so he's got some stretching and strengthening exercises as well in here. And I think there's even some patterns. So I am looking forward to kind of diving into this book and learning some ways to make sure to keep my body healthy, because doing things like knitting those cables at a really tight gauge, knowing that it's hurting my hands, making sure that I am going to be able to knit far into the future. So I think that's a really good book. I don't think it is available on Amazon, or at least I think they were out of stock or something. It's something that you need to buy directly from his website, which is what I did. Or I did notice that there are some yarn shops that they carry the book. So you might check your local yarn shop to see if they have it, if you are interested in the book. But it was something that I had to buy directly from Carson's website. Anyway, so that's exciting. New yarn, new book. So things that I will get to in the future. Since I talked quite a bit about roundtable yarns in the t-shirt section, I actually don't have a lot to say in the what I'm dyeing section, but I did want to give you an update. I mentioned last time that I was going to start looking for sample knitters and crocheters. I have sat down and made a list, it's a long list of really gorgeous projects that I would love to be able to display in my booth. So I've made a list. I have had a call out for sample knitters and crocheters. So if you are on my mailing list, then on Tuesday you should have received an email, my regular newsletter, and in that newsletter I have information on becoming a sample knitter or crocheter for me. And so there's a form basically that I've asked people to fill out to express their interest and to give me some more information so I can match up people to the right project. Because I don't want to give you a two-color lace brioche project if you've never done brioche before. So just matching up skills to projects. And I'm really excited. Quite a few people have expressed interest and signed up. So I'm going to be making. I'm going to use spreadsheets a lot. Making a list of this person has these skills and this pattern needs these skills. Do those match up? So it'll take me a little bit of time to get those matched up, but I want to do that as soon as possible so I can get yarn out to people and get some samples back for DFW Fiberfest. So if you are not on my newsletter, or if you did not get that newsletter, then let me know. Send me a message. The easiest thing to do is just to email me, Karen@roundtableyarns.com. Or you can, send me a message on Ravelry, Karen Dawn. But anyway, send me a message and I will give you the link to the form for the sample knitters. I don't want to put the link in the show notes because I do want to make it not so publicly accessible. I want people who sign up to be people who are familiar with Round Table Yarns. And so so if you're on my newsletter list, then I know that you're familiar and interested. Anyway, but if you're not on my list or if you didn't get it and you are interested, let me know and I will give you the link to sign up. And if you're not on my mailing list, I encourage you to sign up so that way you don't miss out on things like this. And you can go to one of my websites, roundtableyarns.com or KarenDawnDesigns.com, and there are boxes on those websites to sign up for the list. So sample knitters. So I will be doing that. What was the other thing? Oh, pattern distributors. So there are a couple of pattern distributors that work with designers who are self-publishing patterns. So that way they can have their patterns made available in print form to places like local yarn shops or to people who have booths. So people like me. So I have looked into those pattern distributors, and with one of them, I noticed that they have some of their designers have participated in kind of an additional program that in addition to the print copy of the pattern, you get the coupon code to allow for a Ravelry download of the pattern. So also in my newsletter, I did a survey of how important is it for you to have a print copy of a pattern? How important is it for you to have an electronic, to have both? And so seeing those answers have been really helpful in trying to decide this. And I think really the best solution is to have both be available, print with the option to have the electronic download. I can't just sell the electronic patterns. That Ravelry in-store sales program, it really is for local yarn shops, for brick and mortar stores, not for people like me who are dyers who have Fiber Festival booths. So I can't just do the electronic versions. But the print plus the electronic, this distributor does have some of that. And so I spent a good chunk of time last night. I had already looked at patterns, but I spent time last night looking specifically at the ones that also include the download, and found many of the patterns that I had already kind of picked out, as well as some new ones. So my list kind of got bigger for the types of samples that I would like in my booth. So if you're curious about that, if you go to my Ravelry account and look at my favorites, I have a bundle that says something about possible sample projects or something like that. I'm pretty sure you can see that if you look at my my Ravelry page in my favorites, in case you're interested in seeing what kinds of samples I might be thinking about. Anyway, so that was fun to look at those patterns and to have that option of the pattern distributor. So so I've been working on that. And there was one other thing that I thought of, but I didn't write down, so it is slipping my mind. And I guess if it was important, then I would have remembered it. And if not, I will talk about it next time. So I think since I talked a lot about Round Table Yarns in the shirt section, that's probably a pretty good update. So I have a question from the Questions for Karen thread. And if you have a question that you would like me to answer on the podcast, make sure you go over to that thread on the Ravelry podcast forum and post your question, and I will answer it in a future episode. So this question comes from Christy Rose, and Christy asks, we have talked quite a bit about Etsy. Are there any other platforms that you would recommend for someone interested in opening a shop? Non-yarn related, but handmade items. Okay. So the unfortunate thing is that Etsy does seem to have a big corner on the market. When shoppers, people who buy handmade goods, are thinking about where to go to buy handmade goods, Etsy does seem to be the first place that pops into people's mind. But there are some alternatives. So another big name, at least, is Amazon, which has opened a Amazon Handmade side of things. There are some downsides to Amazon Handmade, though. First of all, from what I was able to tell, if people search just in regular Amazon, your item will not pop up. They actually need to go to Amazon Handmade to search for handmade items. So that is one thing. I need to absolutely double check to make sure that's true. But that seems to be something to keep in mind. The second thing is, a lot of times people will, I've heard on a lot of forums, don't use Handmade at Amazon because the terms and services that you agree to when you sign up are really horrible. You basically are giving Amazon permission. Let's see, I've got it listed down here. Where does the list go? Okay, so the kind of license you're giving them, a non-exclusive license to use anything you upload into their site. So they clarify that the kind of license you're giving them does not require them to pay you a royalty. It lasts forever. It cannot be canceled. It allows them to grant the same license rights to someone else, to sub-license them, and it is worldwide. And so people interpret that to mean if you list something on Amazon Handmade, you are basically giving Amazon permission to use your content, to use your pictures, and they are owning that content. And so that's kind of, I think, made people not want to go the route of Amazon Handmade. But I wanted to make sure before I said that on the podcast that was accurate, and I'm glad I checked, because I actually found a post from a lawyer who works with a lot of creative businesses, and she talks about this this part of the terms, and she says that really what they're asking for is because they need the right to use and display your content so they can show it on other people's computers. They need the right to duplicate, because when the seller uploads their image, and then somebody else is viewing it, let's see, they're making a temporary copy of it, so it's kind of this very legalese type of thing. They need the ability to modify and change your content because of the different aspect ratios of their apps and websites. They also need the ability to translate your content to other languages so that your shop is available to all buyers. They need the right to distribute your content so they can include it in their newsletters on their homepage or help promote your products. And the lawyers want them to be able to convert it to any format that they choose. So if they decide to print postcards and we start having computers in our brains, they don't come back and have to get your permission to use your work there. And she makes the point that Etsy actually has very similar terms as well. So so that is what people are fearful of, but there are actually good reasons that Amazon has for what they are asking. And like I said, Etsy actually asks for very similar things. So what she looks at is, so what are some of the potential issues with Amazon Handmade? And she does say that you are, basically, when you create a product page, you create what Amazon calls a detail page. This page is permanently added to the Amazon catalog, and this page will remain even if you no longer are selling your products there, or if you sell out of that product. Additionally, under Amazon's terms of services, you give Amazon and its affiliates, including other sellers, a license to use your content within the Amazon service, and other Amazon sellers can list the same product against the detail page you created. So if you have knit a hat, let's say you just knit a blue hat, that's a 2x2 ribbing. If someone else has knit a blue hat with 2x2 ribbing, they can come along and use your detail page and sell their hat. So that I think is problematic for sure. So if that is something that you're concerned about, which I personally think you should be concerned about things like that, Amazon Handmade is probably not going to be the best platform, but it is an option definitely to look into. So some of the other options, there is something called Artfire. And I had heard of Artfire quite a few years ago. A lot of indie dyers tried out Artfire for a while, and I think they eventually kind of went back to Etsy. But it does look like Artfire is still around, and they definitely are selling handmade items. And I will link to all these sites on the show notes, but they're definitely selling handmade items, and it is a marketplace where people can search and find things. So it's a marketplace like Etsy, but I don't know how many people know about it and how many buyers are actually going there. But it probably would be it would probably be one of the top alternatives that I would suggest looking into. Something that is not familiar to me, but that I found in a search that seemed to be something that people were saying was really good, is something called Zibbet, Zibbet. But I looked at their website, and again, it looks like it is a marketplace like Etsy. But I was having trouble trying to actually search this marketplace to find things. They've got featured items that they put on their front page, but I wasn't really sure how to search. I guess there's a little there's a little magnifying glass with a search box. So there's a search box. So it looks like you can search handmade things. And there are categories. So you can search in there. Okay. So I should have poked around a little bit more. It's just not, and it may be because I'm on my iPad, so it's a more mobile type of website. So yes, it is definitely searchable. So Zibbet might be something to look into. I don't know anything about it. I've never used it myself. So you would need to do a little bit more research. So those are the things that are like Etsy, that are a marketplace where buyers can go to and search and find specific items that meet the search. As far as other types of things, there are other platforms that you can use to build websites. I use Shopify. There's also Squarespace. So if you've seen the little square card readers, Squarespace is basically part of that. And then there are things like Big Cartel and also Big Commerce. They are two different things. And some other types of platforms like that. But those are all things for you to build your own website, and they do not have that same marketplace type of aspect like Etsy does. So with the marketplace aspect, buyers come and they search, and they can find things from all different types of sellers. So they can search like hand knit hat, and they'll find hand knit hats from lots of different people. Platforms like Shopify and Squarespace and Big Cartel are platforms where you create your own individual independent website, and there is no marketplace where people search for things. You actually have to, kind of in marketing speak, you have to drive your own traffic. That you have to use, try to get your stuff to pop up in a Google search. And try to use things like Instagram and Facebook and other social media to advertise and get the word out about what you're selling. So it depends on how much work you want to kind of put into getting traffic to your site. If you're able to drive your own traffic, then one of those website builders would be really good. There's also WooCommerce if you want to do a WordPress site. That's another one. So if you want to do any of those types of things and drive your own traffic, then there are lots of options there. But as far as marketplaces, I think probably Artfire and Zibbet would be the two I would start with if you are wanting to steer clear of Etsy. But I don't know how successful those are. Because I definitely have never used Zibbet, and Artfire, it's been a few years since I've really looked into that one. I am reading a really good series right now, The Raven Cycle by, hope I get this somewhat right, Maggie Stiefvater. So this is the cover of the first book. So the first book is called The Raven Boys, and it basically is a group of boys that are at a kind of a boarding school. It's in the United States. So it's a high school, and it's for very, very rich boys. And so they're at this school, but they are definitely one of them is obsessed with searching for Owen Glendower, who is a Welsh kind of now legendary figure, definitely historical and legendary figure. Anyway, so he believes that Glendower's body was brought to the United States, and he's searching for it. There's so much more to it than this. I want to not give away things, but I think in not giving away things, sometimes I don't let the full kind of the coolness and excitement of the book always come through. Anyway, so they, although they're at this rich private, you know, boys boarding school, they are definitely kind of doing their search. And then in the town, not at the school, is a teenage girl named Blue. And her mom and her family, the women in her family, are all psychics. They actually kind of run a psychic hotline, and they do like tarot card readings and whatnot. But Blue herself does not have any of those types of psychic abilities. What she does is, her kind of ability is that she, her presence makes other people's abilities stronger. So if her mom has a particularly important person that wants a reading, Blue will sit in the room and kind of amplify the psychic abilities. Anyway, so she gets involved with these boys in their search, and it's so much more interesting and exciting than I'm mentioning here. So I finished the first book, and I'm a little over halfway through the second book. So that the second book is called The Dream Thieves, and I think the covers are just really cool. So there is the second book, The Dream Thieves, which I'm trying to decide if this is a giveaway. One of the characters is able to take things from his dreams and make them physical. So physically take things from his dreams. Anyway, so I'm really enjoying these books. They're well written. I really like the characters. There are plot twists and turns that the clues are there for, but I haven't really seen coming. So that's always nice in getting books like that. It looks like there are 4 books in the series, so I still have 2 more to go after this. And it also looks like it's been optioned for a TV series, so potentially it could be on the small screen someday. But I'm really enjoying that, and that's pretty much what I've been focused on reading. Listening to some podcasts. I'm still listening to especially some historical podcasts that have been interesting. But really, since I've been trying to knit all those Christmas gifts, I haven't been doing as much reading as I would like to. That's something else I want to kind of reflect back on. I haven't done as much fiction reading this in 2017 as I would really like to. So one of the things I want to do in 2018 is a little more fiction reading. And I think some of that is maybe having a good list of these are the books that I want to read, and kind of having specifics. Okay, once I'm finished this, I want to read this, because I've gotten bogged down a bit this year in, well, I'm reading this book, but I'm not really enjoying it. But if I don't continue reading it, then I have to sit down and decide which book I want to read next. And sometimes making that decision can be pretty difficult. Out of all of these books that I have downloaded on my Kindle, what one do I want to read next? So I think if I actually have a list of at least a couple of books that I know are the kind of the up next books, then if I do get bogged down in a book, then it won't be so hard to stop reading it, because I will have another book right away already decided upon that I can move on to. So in kind of reflecting and thinking and planning, I think that might help me a lot in trying to get more reading done, so I don't get bogged down in a book just because I don't want to make the decision on what to read next. So hopefully I will have more to share with you guys in this segment in 2018. We're coming down toward the end of the 4th quarter, so the 4th quarter knit along. If you have not yet, if you've not finished a shawl and you think you can finish before the end of the year, make sure you do that and post to the FO thread. So that way you can be entered to win this quarter's prize. this mini skein pack from Wonderland Yarns. So let you see the colors a little bit better there. So a nice gradient pack there. So one random winner from the FO thread I will draw. Well, December 31st, you have until then to post in the FO thread, and since January 1st is New Year's Day, depending on what we're doing that day, I may do the drawing that day, or it may be January 2nd, but I will draw a winner, and the winner will get that, that mini skein pack. So we have 2 more FOs that have been posted since the last recording of the podcast, so I wanted to show those off. So the first one comes from Tim Stevens, and it's actually Tim Stevens 4. So Tim finished the Fellowship Shawl, which is one of my patterns. So the literary book that it comes from is Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, so a medieval story. And he did that out of Malabrigo Rios in a really pretty colorway, and I got to see it in person. He was actually, when he took this picture, it was actually at the Knitting Fairy. So it's a really, really pretty version of that shawl, so thank you for sharing that. And then AC Sparky 89 has finished this shawl. Isn't that cool? Okay, so that one, and I looked up the pattern page for it. It is the Golden Lion Throne by Barbara Benson, and the designer says, "This shawl marks the beginning of my exploration of another great house featured in Frank Herbert's Dune novels, House Carino." My husband has read the Dune books, but I haven't. Anyway, so the literary or book related is Dune. So pretty shawl. There are lots of nice versions on the pattern page, and I really like Elizabeth's version and how it turned out. So 2 more FOs, which let's see, which brings us to, I think that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 FOs, you guys. So you've got a really, really good chance of winning the prize. I'd love to see some more in there between now and the end of the year, so make sure you go post. And since it is toward the end of this 4th quarter, that means it's time to think about the 1st quarter of 2018 and what our theme for the knit along and crochet along, what it should be. So I think probably while I have this in my head, I will post a nomination thread at the same time that I'm posting the thread for the discussion of this episode. So go ahead and head over to the Ravelry podcast group and put in your nominations for the 1st quarter 2018 knit along. And then we'll give a little bit of time for the nominations. And then I will set up the voting thread, and then I will announce the winner on basically on the podcast. If I do record a podcast in 2 weeks, I'm not quite sure, especially with Christmas, if that'll be if it'll be selected by then. But anyway, you'll get the announcement. It'll definitely be on the podcast Ravelry group, so you can plan what you want to do for your 1st quarter knit along. So again, make sure you're finishing up your 4th quarter literary themed shawl before the end of the year and post in the FO thread. Good luck. Thank you so much for watching this episode where I reflect back on 2017 through parts of it and look ahead to 2018. Again, I will try to record something in around the 2-week time frame, but based upon the holidays and family visiting, we'll see kind of when exactly that might happen. Maybe a full episode, maybe a shorter episode. But definitely it will not be before Christmas. So for those of you who celebrate, Merry Christmas. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful holiday season. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Until then, happy knitting.